Analysts are expecting South Africa's national budget will be passed following significant consultations among parties within the Government of National Unity. For more now, we cross to SABC News Senior Economics reporter Nompu Siziba, who is in Cape Town. Good afternoon, Nompu, and over to you.
Thanks very much for joining us here at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. This is where the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, will be holding the budget or presenting the budget at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Of course, it's the first time. In previous budgets, we've been attending the speech there at the Newminster car park, which is just adjacent to the old Parliament, the Parliament that we're used to, where traditionally the budget has been given. And of course, we know that this stems from the fact that there was a fire at Parliament a few years ago, which resulted in parliamentary proceedings having to take place elsewhere. So it's happening here at the International Convention Centre in Cape Town, and hopefully you are actually on the visual of what it looks like inside where that plenary will take place. We are seeing a number of members of Parliament here and there. We are actually located as media just outside of where the venue will be taking place. Initially, of course, we were outside as they had to do a security sweep. Part of the reason why we are here at the ICC is because, of course, we were at the Newminster car park, but that is a tent. It's a massive tent, and Cape Town has many vagaries in terms of its weather, having a number of seasons in one day, and the winds and the rain can get quite harsh, and so it was felt that at this time that would not be an appropriate venue, and hence it's being had here. So, of course, we are going to continue covering the upcoming budget, speaking to a number of analysts, and we're going to be speaking with Dr. Iraj Abadian a little bit later. But in the meantime, let's hand you over now to my colleague Mlondi Khadebe in KZN, who's giving us some thoughts around what people are thinking on budget there. Mlondi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nompu. We are here in the Durban University of Technology to try and speak to the students who are also basically very affected when it comes to the budgeting, because most of the students should understand that they are funded by the NSFAS and they all have that kind of problem when it's the beginning of the year. But you'll just speak to them and find out from them on their issues. Okay. Specifically kafushane nje ngebudget noma isabelo mali wena sikuthinta kanjani njengomuntu oseningizimu Afrika?
Singithinta kakhulu as umfundi wala eDurban University of Technology, as sazi ukuthi sibe siafektekile kakhulu, so lento yebudget is affects sonke as students, as I'm also funded by NSFAS, so lento le ngiyabandakanya nami yangithinta futhi.
So mhlambe iliphi ithembo nalo uma ngabe njengamanje ibudget izobekwa eParliament, iliphi ithembo nalo?
Amathemba esinawo ukuthi bezosinika iclarity ukuthi azodistribute kanjani ama-funds, as lento is affects kakhulu, as for umuntu oshiye abazali ekhaya who cannot afford ukuthi bekuzame nga something, and esikhathini esinjena kungangeni lutho yes affects kakhulu lento esikoleni. So we expect ukuthi government kube nendlela ukuthi asinike planning ukuthi kuzowenziwa kanjani moving forward kunalento.
Okay. So okay. Specifically is basically explaining that NSFAS is also, they would like to see more funds put to NSFAS so that they'll be able to get education, because he is also funded by NSFAS. We'll also speak to another student. Thank you very much for your time. Can you have your name and your surname?
I'm Sheree Miraj.
Tell us more about your expectations of the budget, and tell us more where you're coming from.
I'm from Pietermaritzburg. And I think a large portion of the budget needs to be given to the health sector, because the state of our public hospitals are terrible. And I have family who attend these public hospitals and they really suffer. It's extremely hard for them to just get basic medical care. And it's really bad. Hospitals don't even have money for generators when there's no electricity. As we know, load shedding is a huge problem everywhere. So they're cooking food on the fire. And it's a bad situation for the health sector.
So you'd like to see more funds put to the health system so that you can get assisted?
Yes, definitely.
So tell us more, as a student at the university, are you funded by NSFAS? Are you finding difficulties around health as well as education and job creation programs?
I am NSFAS funded. It's been really difficult of recent months because we haven't been receiving our allowances on time. So we don't have travel allowances. I know my classmates don't have money for food and stuff like that. So we would just like to see our monies come in on time, and hopefully to see a lot more students being able to be funded instead of the fraud that's going on. And I can't say it explicitly, but there are monies that are being taken out of NSFAS, which is unfair because the youth is the future of this country and we do deserve good education. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Can you also voice I just want to hear from you, as a student, give us your name and then tell us about your challenges and your expectations from the budget.
Okay, my name is Akira Super, and from this budget, I mean, as she explained, the health sector, the water and sanitation, and our roads are terrible. You cannot travel on a road that doesn't have any potholes on it. It's a lot, and I mean, even after you go and you hit a pothole, then you have to think about your cars and then all of the finances afterwards. And yes, I'm also NSFAS funded, and it has become very difficult as of the recent months. We didn't get our allowances on time, and traveling from a far distance, it becomes a lot. Yeah.
So your biggest hope for this is that the minister also include the NSFAS budgeting?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are the students at the Durban University of Technology briefing us in relation to their issues. We did speak earlier on to the residents who also mentioned that they are worried about the state of health facilities as well as the police stations around the province of KwaZulu-Natal, because they say those areas need to be improved. So they would like to see the minister to add more funds when it comes to health system, safety and security, as well as job creation in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Back to you in studio.
Thanks very much for that. Let me hand it over now to my colleague Bulelani Philip, who's on site with me. Bulelani, it's over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Nompu. Of course, we are taking some political reactions right here outside the Cape Town International Convention Center. I'm going to bring in now Rise Mzansi leader Songezo Zibi, who's also the chair of SCOPA. Firstly, as Rise Mzansi, what's your expectation for this third-time budget?
Look, I think there can only be small changes to the budget because we've seen most of it in March. Let me tell you what we are worried about. What we are worried about is that the finance minister will announce a revenue constraints, which mean that there might be reductions to some frontline services. And let me give viewers a sense. There was about 29 billion, an extra 29 billion over the next 3 years allocated to the Department of Health nationally and in provinces. Part of that was to employ unemployed doctors and nurses and additional equipment and so on. We worry that is likely to be cut. The second was another 29 billion to education, for instance, which includes early childhood development. Also to prevent teachers, about 17,000 teachers, from getting retrenched. We are concerned that may be reduced. Then there was 46 billion rand in this financial year, which was set aside for infrastructure. Part of that was an allocation to municipalities, to metros, in order to turn around metros. It was also to PRASA so that people can get a train every 5 minutes. We are worried that may be reduced as well. So what we had wanted in February and March is that there is an expansion of services that South Africans have been waiting for a very long time. But the finance minister exists in a democracy, and South Africans have spoken out very clearly and said no more taxes, which means we have to reduce the amount of money by which it's increased.
So as we speak now, it's hours before President Cyril Ramaphosa meets his U.S. counterpart, President Donald Trump. What advice would you give him in terms of going into that contentious meeting?
Look, I met him about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago when we were discussing a budget anyway. And I said to him, two things. I think to be calm because you're dealing with an unconventional character. Secondly, bring Gary Player or any else. I'm told that would work, and I saw some news reports saying that any else and them were involved because you're dealing with an unpredictable character. It's really difficult to say exactly how to approach a meeting than to manage the relationship as best as you can.
All right, let's leave it there. Songezo Zibi, Rise Mzansi leader. I'm going to bring Nobuntu Hlazo Webster, deputy leader of BOSA. Firstly, as BOSA, we're coming here for the third time around. Do we expect anything new that will be tweaked by the minister on the current budget?
Budget 3.0, we are here and we do expect new. I think what South Africans made clear, even in the process of these previous two budgets, is that, first of all, they don't want to carry the burden of ANC sins. They made it clear that they don't want taxes, and this we've got to see. We cannot see an increase in taxes, so it's got to at least be different in that way. We know there's a withdrawal of VAT, which we fought for and engaged on, but now you can't see any more taxes. You can't put a burden on South Africans for your own misdoings and for your own irresponsibilities as a party. So that's the first. We're expecting a growth budget. We have to be looking at growth. We have to be looking at how do we invest in infrastructure. We have to be looking at how do we ensure that we are catalyzing jobs and catalyzing job creation in the country. So we want to see boldness, because that first budget, even the second, was not bold enough when it comes to growth.
The president won't be here today. He's busy in the US. Your advice to him?
South Africa first. Put South Africa first, and that means that we have a trade relationship with the US, and we want to see that working back to the sovereignty of South Africa, our own independence, and who we are as a country has got to be maintained.
All right, thank you so much, Nobundu Hlazo Webster, Deputy Leader of HOSA. I'm going to bring the leader of Al Jama now, Muhammad Khanife Hendricks. Thank you so much for your time. Firstly, as Al Jama, what advice are you going to give the minister, or have you given to the minister coming into this budget?
Well, we have told the minister that he must soften the austerity measures that has plagued South Africa 30 years in our democracy. And it's time to turn the tide, that we must start removing austerity measures, starting with older persons. So as you know, we're now going to do budget 3.0. Budget 1.0 gave older persons 150 rand increase, which is more than double the inflation rate. So that was a good signal. Now in budget 3.0, the older persons, instead of getting 150 rand increase, will get 120 rand. That's a backward step, and that's what we told the Minister of Finance.
The president won't be here today. He's currently in the US, in Washington, to have bilateral talks with the US president. Your advice to him?
My advice to the president is, first of all, to tell Donald Trump that Afrikaners have become 7 times richer than they were during the days of apartheid. And that can be proven. And that should be enough to convince Donald Trump that he's been wrongly advised.
All right, thank you so much, Muhammad Khanife Hendricks, the leader of Al Jama. Of course, we continue to take political reactions in the lead up to the budget later this afternoon. For more reaction and comments, we'll cross now to Nompu.
Philip, speaking to a number of political parties, and of course we've had a real A-team on this budget broadcast, speaking to those politicians, Abra Barbie, Bulelani Philip, Samkele Maseko, getting those perspectives for us. Well, with me now, I do have with me Dr. Iraj Abedian. He's the Chief Economist at Pan-African Investment and Research, to give us his insights on this forthcoming budget to be tabled at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much, Iraj, for joining us. So, of course, it's been a crazy year in terms of the budgetary process. This afternoon, the Finance Minister will be delivering what we're calling or dubbing Budget 3.0. What are your expectations? And given the fact that they lack resources, where do you think they might be able to raise taxes? And do you think we're going to see massive cuts here and there?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I think this budget is significant, and I will be looking for not how much the minister cuts and how much finds new revenues and how he balances the books for this year. The significance of this budget, after having gone through what we have gone through, which is for the first time in South African history, not just the democratic, even pre-democracy, we've never had this experience. What does that mean? It means that we need to look at the root cause of what has brought us here. And the root cause, quite frankly, is that we haven't paid attention to the generation of revenue, which is growth, which is GDP growth, which is job creation, which is income generation for companies, for the individuals, and therefore revenue for government. So I'll be looking forward to see what the minister over the past few months in his consultations within the political system as well as within the broader society, what has he come up with to deal with that issue? Because that issue is not just 2005, it's also next year and the year after and the year after. If it's not addressed now, it's going to next year this time become a bigger issue. And expenditure cutting, no matter where you cut it, it's got limitations. Yes, there's a lot of fat, there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of abuse, but all of that, even if you deal with it, all of that, you still cannot move medium term without addressing how we're going to generate growth. So that would be number one expectation, my expectation technically from the minister. If he hasn't done that, it means he hasn't really got to the root cause of the problem. The second issue is a more of an immediate one this year. This year, where budgets, how the budget will be kind of balanced with a lot of borrowing, but not too much borrowing. As we all know, our public borrowing has been capped out. And this has been done since 2008, 2009. Every time that the government had a shortfall, instead of dealing with the source of it, which is lack of GDP growth, they borrowed more and more and more and brought us to a point where the government has run out of headroom, as we call it, for borrowing. So this year got to do two things. One, cut the expenditure, all the unnecessary or good to have, and it must start within the cabinet. If I was in Minister of Finance's shoes, I would have gone to the colleague and say, cut 40% of your salaries now with effect from June. Show to the nation that we have to do belt tightening, not be unkind, not to be reckless, but to be responsible. So, will he do it? Remember, you know better than me that the unproductive and unjustifiable from an economic point of view expenses within the government is plenty. And let me give you one basic example. The cost to the company of each minister in South Africa is a multiple of the cost to the company of the highest paid CEO in the company. No CEO that I know has got 15 staff and security and bag carriers and cell phone carriers and free flights and free housing and this. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is where it bites. Okay, you might say if they do all of that, it will be maybe $1 billion. But it's $1 billion is $1 billion, and symbolically it's important. There are other fat to be cut. We all know, and I've been partly to it since middle of 1990s, the balance between government head office, government departments, head office expense as opposed to service delivery. For me, service delivery are doctors, nurses, hospital and clinic staff. In comparison with the cost of Department of Health, all 10 of them, there is an imbalance. The same with Department of Education, the same with Department of Police. That imbalance cost us a lot. And we pay the money, but the service delivery doesn't happen. Now, South Africa's per capita expense on health, public health, not private, public health, is the highest amongst all the emerging economies per capita. So it's not as if we are not paying for public health, but go to any public hospital, you don't get the, why? Because the cost of overhead of the departments, ministers, MECs, all the peripheral staff, as opposed to the cost of cold face of service delivery.
Raj, sorry, let me disturb you there. We are going to continue our conversation, and I think you've given the audience quite a lot to munch on already in that response.